Good day, class. For the continuations of our discussion in CDI2, we will go to discuss the putrefactions of the body, the medical legal investigation of death, what is autopsy, rules in conducting autopsy, the medical legal classifications of the causes of death, and penal classifications of violent deaths, and also the death under special circumstances. So, first, what is the putrefactions of the body? So when we say putrefaction, it is the breaking down of the body complex protein into simpler components associated with the evolution of foul-smelling gases and accompanied by the change of color of the body. Pag sinabi po natin putrefaction, ito na po yung simula ng pagkabulok ng isang bangkay kung saan may pagbabago sa amoy at kulay nito. So, meron din po tayong special modifications of putrefaction. The first one is the mummification. So, mummification, it is the complete dehydrations of all body tissue in which result in the shivering and preservations of the body. A cadaver left in an extremely dry, hot area will mummify in about year or will remain in this condition for several years if undisturbed by animal or an insect, which is defined by Lille in 2014 and Lagunera in 2010. So pag sinabi po natin mummification, ito po yung kadalasan na ginagawa or na-observe natin sa mga maiinit na bansa kung saan po yung evaporations of the body fluid is mabilis kaysa kay decompositions. So the death in the desert, like po in Egypt, the body has more tendency to mummify. And the mummification po, it is also the process of the preserving the body after death by deliberately drying or embalming flesh. This typically involves the removing of the moisture from a deceased body and using chemicals or natural preservatives such as resins to desiccate the flesh and the organs. So, meron din po tayong kinds of mummifications. So, the first one is natural mummifications. So, when a person is buried in a hot, arid, or sandy soil, there will be insufficient moisture for the growth of multifractions of putrefactive bacteria. Pag sinabi po natin putrefactive bacteria, ito po yung nagkakos kung bakit simula nang naaagnas yung bangkay. So, the body will become dehydrated and mummified, which is caused by the force of nature. Pag sinabi naman po natin natural mummifications, ito po yung the process by which the skin and the organs of deceased persons or animals are preserved without the introductions of chemicals. And kadalasan po itong natural mummification is rare lang siya or it only happen in a specific situations like po ng extreme cold or arid conditions or lack of oxygen. So next we have the artificial mummifications. So the principle involved in artificial mummifications are the following. The first one is accelerations of the evaporations of the tissue fluid of the body before the actual onset of decomposition. The second one is addition of some body preservatives to inhibit decompositions and to allow evaporations of fluid. This is made by treatment of the body with arsenic, formalin, resinous, or tarry materials. Pag sinabi na po natin artificial mummifications, ito na po yung process na ginagamit or yung modes para ma-preserve yung isang bangkay is gumagamit po tayo ng mga chemicals para ma-prolong po natin yung decomposition nito. So next we have the saponifications or adipocere formations. So this is a condition wherein the fatty tissue ng katawan is nagtatransform po into a soft brownish white substance na tinatawag po natin na adipocere. So the layer of subcutaneous tissue is the frequent site of its formations. So take note po, pag sinabi po natin na adipocere, ito po yung parang soapy or waxy materials or rancid smell that dissolve in alcohol and ether when burned, and it is produced a yellow flame, which is defined by Lil in 2014 and Lagunera in 2010. And si adipocere din po is also known as the corpse wax or grave wax or mortuary wax. Is a wax-like organic substance formed by the anaerobic bacterial hydrolysis of fats in tissues, and such body fats in corpses. And in its formations, putrefaction is replaced by a permanent firm cast of fatty tissue of internal organs and the face. Next, meron po tayong medical-legal investigation of death. We have stages of medical-legal investigations. We have the crime scene investigations and also the autopsy. So, sa crime scene investigation naman, it is the conduct of processes, more particularly the recognition, handling, preservations, and the documentations of physical evidence to include the identifications and interview of witnesses and the arrest of suspects at the crime scenes, the manner the criminal act was executed, and such other things that may be useful in the prosecution of the case. So take note po, si crime scenes is, other term po niya is locus criminis, kung saan or yung place where the essential ingredients of the criminal act took place. It also includes the setting of the crime and the adjoining places of the entry and exit of both offender and victim. Saka hindi po lahat po ng crimes have a well-defined crime scenes like po kay estafa, malversation, continuing crimes, and etc. However naman po, where medical evidence may be present like in case of murder, homicide, physical injuries, sex crimes, crime scenes is almost invariably present. So, meron po tayong methods of conducting search. So, take note po, before the actual performance of the search, it is advisable to stand aside and make an estimate of the situations. A picture of the whole area must be taken, and the area must be cordoned, or by the standard must be not be allowed to get in. Depending upon the size, the terrain, and the conditions of the crime scene. So the following are the methods of search may be applied. The first one, we have the strip method. So when you say strip method, it is the area is blacked out in a form of rectangle, and the searcher proceeds slowly at the same pace along the path parallel to one side of the rectangle. Pag sinabi po nating strip method, ito po kung saan yung crime scene is hatiin siya into a block or rectangle form. Then si searcher is mag-i-start na siyang mag-search slowly from one parallel or from one rectangle to another rectangle hanggang sa matapos po nila yung rectangle or yung block kung sa ilan po yung saan po nila or ilan po beses nilang hinati yung crime scenes. Kaya po tinawag natin siyang strip method dahil unti-unti yung pagsa-search ni na searcher sa bawat part po ng crime scenes to make sure na wala po silang ma-miss in conducting a search. So next we have the double strip or grid method. So pag sinabi na po natin na double strip or grid method, it is the search is modification of the strip search method. So the searcher will traverse first parallel to the base and then parallel to the side. So ito po yung pina-improve or enough grade or minodified na strip methods. Naging double strip or grid method siya dahil po si searcher is hinati din po into a rectangle or block form si crime scenes. Then si searcher is mag-i-start from one block hanggang sa matapos po hanggang sa matapos po ito, and then sa other side na naman po is magkakandak na naman po sila ng search. Parang double strip method po yung gagawin dito na pagsa-search. Next, we have the spiral method. Pag sinabi naman po natin spiral method, ito po yung sina-searcher is mag-fall in line po sila. Then, yung pagsa-search po is mag-i-start from outside hanggang sa unti-unti po silang papasok hanggang dun sa pinaka-center. Bali, yung pagsa-search is from a spiral method. From outside to inside or vice versa po. Pwede po sina-searcher is mag-start po sila from the center of the crime scenes, then papalabas po sa crime scenes. Yan po ang tinatawag natin na spiral method. Next po, may we have the wheel or ray method. Ito naman po yung the searchers gather at the center and proceed outwards along the radii or spoke. So ito naman po yung search method na kung saan sina-searcher is mag-iipon-tipon sa gitna, and then meron po silang kanya-kanyang position ng pagkakandak ng search. Parang hinati po siya into a pie. So, nag-start po sila sa gitna and then outward the radial form. So, yan po si wheel or si ray method. Next, we have this zone method naman po. So, yung buong area po ng crime scenes is hahatiin po siya into a quadrant. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then po, sa isang quadrant, pwede din po siya ulit hatiin into another quadrant para po lumiit yung scope or yung lawak ng isa-search nila para masinsinan po yung magagawa nilang pulse search sa bawat side po ni crime scene. So, next is and take note din po pala meron po tayong sinusunod or we have the golden rule in conducting criminal investigations. So, the golden rule states that do not touch, alter, moves, or transfer any object at the crime scene unless it is properly marked, measured, sketched, or photographed. So, yung purpose po ng ating golden rule is to avoid the mutilations, alterations, and contaminations of the physical evidence found at the crime scene. So, lagi pong tatandahan yun sa pagkakandak po ng criminal investigations. The golden rule in our criminal investigations. So, next, what is autopsy? So, when we say autopsy, it is an comprehensive study of a dead body performed by a trained physician employing recognized dissection procedure and techniques. It includes removal of the tissues for further examinations. So ano nga ba po yung pagkakaiba ni autopsy kay postmortem examination? So si autopsy, it indicates that in addition to an external examinations, the body is often and internal examination is conducted. So, bali si autopsy, hindi lang po yung panlabas, yung kanilang tinitingnan, kundi possible, pati po yung sa loob is i-examine para malaman po yung cause of death. Well po si postmortem examination naman po, it refers to external examinations of the body without the incision being made, although blood and other body fluids may be collected for examination. Si postmortem examination is more for external examination lang po. Pag kinakandak din po si autopsy, once po yung cause of death is hindi po ma-identified or unknown. So, hindi po malaman kung ano yung pagkamatay or cause ng pagkamatay ng isang tao. So, doon po tayo magkakandak ng autopsy. While po si postmortem examinations, is more on external examinations, which is hindi na po natin kailangan mag-conduct ng autopsy dahil alam na po natin yung cause ng pagkamatay ng isang tao. Halimbawa is, yung isang tao is namatay siya by an heart attack. So, dahil may previous history siya ng hypertension, so yung presumption natin is yung pagkamatay niya is yung kanyang hypertensions, which is yung cause ng kanyang pagka-atake. Halimbawa naman po sa suicide. So, yung mga nagbigti. So, hindi na natin kailangan i-examine yung loob ng katawan dahil alam na natin yung cause ng pagkamatay niya, kundi yung suicide niya or yung pagbikti niya. So, yan po yung pinagkaiba nila. So, next we have the kinds of autopsy. Meron po tayong tinatawag na hospital or non-official autopsy and the medical legal or the official autopsy. Pag sinabi po natin hospital or non-official autopsy, ito po yung sometimes na requested by our hospital doctors to provide more informations about an illness or the cause of death or to further medical research purposes. Kaya po sila nagkakandak ng autopsy. So, the second one naman po is medical legal or official autopsy. Ito naman po yung kung saan yung ating mga judicial officer is nagre-request for responsible for the investigating of death in a certain situations. So, meron po tayong rules in conducting autopsy. So, when shall an autopsy be performed on dead body? So, kailan nga ba kinakandak yung autopsy sa isang cadaver? So, under Section 95 by the PD 856 Code of Sanitations, the first one is whenever it is required by our special laws. The next is, a fan order of competent court, a mayor and a provincial or a city fiscal. Next is upon written request of the police authorities. Next is whenever the Solicitor General, Provincial, or City Fiscal has authorized by existing laws shall deem it necessary to disinter and take possessions of the remains for examination to determine the cause of death. And our last one is whenever the nearest kin shall request in writing to the authorities concerned in order to ascertain the cause of death. Kapag request naman po ng close related families ng cadaver is pwede din pong i-conduct ng autopsy para malaman yung cause ng isang pagkamatay ng kanilang kamag-anak if may doubt po sila dun sa cause of death yun. Next, we have the person who are authorized to perform the autopsies or the dissections. So, the first one po na authorized is yung health officer. The second one is the medical officers of law enforcement agency. And the third one is the members of the medical staff of accredited hospitals. So, next, meron po tayong tinatawag na negative autopsy. So, ano nga ba po si negative autopsy? Pag sinabi po natin negative autopsy, it is an autopsy is called negative because after all efforts, including the gross and microscopic studies and toxicology's analysis, still fail pa rin po na i-reveal yung cause of death ng isang cadaver. And it is an autopsy which after po ng meticulous examinations with the aid of other examination does not yield any defined cause of death. Ibig sabihin, kahit anong masinsinan na examination na po ang ginawa ni pathologist or ni examiner, still hindi po rin po nila malaman yung cause ng pagkamatay ng isang bangkay is yun po yung tinatawag natin na negative autopsy. Next, meron po tayong tinatawag na negligent autopsy, kung saan po yung no cause, yung autopsy wherein no cause of death is found on account of imprudence, negligence, lack of skill, or lack of foresight of the examiner. So pag sinabi po natin negligence autopsy is nangyayari na po to in the part of the pathologist or ni examiner. Kung bakit wala pong makita or hindi po nila malaman yung cause of death ng isang cadaver is nasa part na po ni examiner or ni pathologist na maaaring meron siyang action na kailangan gawin ngunit hindi niya ginawa, or meron siyang act na ginawa na dapat hindi naman niya gawin, which nag-result na hindi niya find out dun sa cause ng death ng isang cadaver. So, ito po yung mga act or omission which may be inadvertent or deliberate in cause of negligent autopsy. The first one is failure to have an adequate history or fact of circumstances surrounding the death. Special circumstances surrounding the death may require special autopsy techniques which the pathologist may fail to do during the autopsy. So example po nito is yung kadalasan po kasi pag si pathologist or si examiner is wala po siyang background dun sa health history ng cadaver. It means wala po siyang pagbabasihan kung saan siya mag-start na mag-examine dun sa katawan. So, kaya yung mga air embolism, drug reactions, or vagal inhibitions is madalas is hindi napapansin po ni examiner or ni pathologist na maaring maging isa din po sa cause ng pagkamatay ng isang bangkay. So the next one, we have the failure to make a thorough external examination. So external examination po, maaring po yung mga animal bites, injection marks, or the electrical necrosis. Maybe po na-overlook po ni pathologist or ni examiner sa kanyang external examinations na ginagawa, which is maaaring part din po ng pagkamatay ng isang bangkay. So next, we have the improper histological. So when we say improper histological examinations, ito po naman po yung mga tissues block may not be taken in proper areas, or yung pong 4 preparations of the microscopic slides and improper lighting during the process of examinations na maaari mag-cause or mag-lead po sa erroneous or error sa interpretations na examinations na kinandak po ni pathologist or ni examiner. So next, we have the lack of toxicological or other laboratory tests or laboratory aids. Ito po yung kung saan yung mga qualitative and quantitative determinations of toxic materials or its metabolites must be shown. Sometimes po difficulties is encountered by the forensic chemist because of the lapse of time and rapid eliminations of drugs. Next, we have, dun sa last din po, we have the pathologist incompetence. Pag sinabi po natin pathologist incompetence, ito po na yung the examiner must have a vast experience. So, dapat po yung magkakandak ng autopsy is may experience na po. Marami na po siyang experience in conducting examinations of a dead body para at least alam na po niya yung gagawin niya. Sometimes kasi isa din po sa naging cause ng negligent autopsy is yung bago pa lang yung mga examiner natin. It means hindi pa nila masyadong gamay yung pag-examine or pag-autopsy. Especially po kung yung autopsy is gagawin niya is for a legal purposes. So, dapat po yung magkakandak ng autopsy is batikan na siya or may experience na po siya para hindi po magkamali sa interpretations ng examinations na gagawin po nila. So next, we have the causes of death naman po. So meron po tayong distinctions between the cause of death and the manner of death. Pag sinabi po natin cause of death, It may be the injury, disease, or the combinations of both injury and disease responsible for initiating the trend or physiological disturbance, brief or prolonged, which produce the fatal examinations. So, pag sinabi po natin physiological disturbance, ito po yung functions referring to a body part functionings na magkakos ng kanyang disease. Next, we have the manner of death naman po. It is the explanations is to how the cause of death came into being and how the cause of death arose. So parang magkasunod lang po sila or interconnected po sila, cause of death kay manner of death. So meron po tayong immediate or the primary cause of death. Pag sinabi po nating immediate or primary cause of death, ito po yung, it applies to cases when trauma or disease kill quickly, that there is no opportunity for sequela or complications to develop. Pag sinabi po nating immediate or primary cause of death, example po nito is yung sa vehicular accident, so which cause a extensive brain laceration, kung saan yung damage or yung cause po ng car accident niya is nagkaroon po siya ng extreme brain lacerations, which is yun po yung cause ng kanyang pagkamatay. So, upon accident, kaagad namatay po si victim dun sa cause ng accident naman or yung inflicted na injury sa kanya ni car accident is yung brain lacerated, which is yun din po yung cause ng kanyang pagkamatay. So, pag sinabi naman po natin na proximate or secondary cause of death, the injury or disease was survived for a sufficient prolonged interval which permitted the development of serious sequelae with actual cause of death. Pag sinabi naman po natin na proximate or secondary cause of death is yung halimbawa sa stab wound. So si Mr. A is sinaksak siya ni Mr. V. So kahit ilang saksak yung ginawa ni Mr. B is hindi pa rin namatay si Mr. A. So ang nangyari is nadala pa siya sa ospital at nagamot yung kanyang mga stab wound is nagamot. But after 3 days is naamatay si Mr. A. So yung pagkamatay niya is hindi dahil doon sa mga saksak, kundi yung bacterial infections na cause ng stab wound, yun yung kinamatay niya. So yung pagkakaiba po ni immediate kay proximate, si immediate yung in-inflict na injury sa kanya is yun na kaagad yung cause ng kanyang pagkamatay. While si proximate naman po is yung in-inflict na injury sa kanya is hindi yun yung cause ng kanyang pagkamatay, kundi yung complications ng injury na na-inflict sa kanya. So yun po yung pagkakaiba ni na immediate at ni proximate cause of death. So next we have the medical legal classifications of classification of the causes of death. We have the natural death. So this is death caused by natural disease, conditions in the body. So the disease may develop spontaneously or it might have been a sequence of physical injury inflicted prior to its development. If a natural disease developed without the interventions of the felonious act of another person, no one can be held responsible of the death. Pag sinabi po natin na natural death, ito po yung natural na pagkamatay ng isang tao. Maaari po yung sanhi nito is yung kanyang sakit, yung kanyang disease, sakit, or maaaring sobrang pagkatanda niya, which is kino-consider din po na natin na natural death yun. Halimbawa naman po is dun sa heart attack, which is kino-consider din natin na natural death dahil yung nag-cause ng kanyang pagkamatay is yung kanyang sakit, which is hypertension. So, as long as po yung cause ng pagkamatay ng isang tao is hindi in-inflict ng other persons or ng outside force, ito po yung kinoconsidered natin na natural death. So next we have the violent death naman. So violent death are those due to injuries inflicted in the body by some forms of outside force. So the physical injury must be proximate cause of death, and the death of the victim is presumed to be a natural consequence of the physical injury inflicted. So when the following facts are established, so matatawag po natin na violent death po yan kapag si victim at the time of the physical injury was inflicted was in a normal health. Ibig sabihin po, si victim nasa normal health but namatay lang po siya dahil dun sa physical injuries na ina-inflict sa kanya maybe by other persons or by other outside force like po dun sa accident, ganyan. So next we have that the death may be expected from physical injuries. Ibig sabihin po, namatay si victim dahil dun sa injury na na-inflicts sa kanya. The third one is the death ensured with reasonable time, which is, yung source po natin dyan is yung People of the Philippines versus Datu Baginda. Next, we have the penal classifications of violent deaths. Meron po tayo accidental deaths, death due to misadventure or accident. An accident is something that happened outside the sway of our will, and although it comes about through some act of will, lies beyond bound of human foreseeable consequences. So pag sinabi po natin na accidental death, ito po yung mga pangyayari na hindi natin kagustuhan at may pag-iingat naman po yung mga action natin, but still, hindi po natin siya nakita, hindi po natin napigilan, hindi po natin napagandaan yung event na yun, kaya nangyari siya. Yan po yung tinatawag natin na accidental death. And take note po, under Article 12, number 4 of the Revised Penal Code, any person who, while performing a lawful act with due care, causes an injury by means of accident without fault or intention of causing it shall be exempted from the criminal liability. So, paano ba ma-exempt si offender sa criminal liability under accidental death? So, dapat po yung mga elements is present siya. So, kung magkulang po ng isa is hindi na po siya qualified as accidental death. Dapat po yung apat na elements na to is present po siya dun sa commission po ng accidental death. So the first one is the person is performing a lawful act. Ibig sabihin, halimbawa sa car accident, si driver is nasa tamang lane siya ng kanyang linya ng kanyang daan, or si driver naman is yung speed niya is tama lang at si driver is hindi nakainom during that accident. So, the second one, he performed it well with due care. It means may pag-iingat yung offender. So, the third one is he caused injury to another by means of accident. Ibig po, yung cause ng mga injury ng kanyang victim is caused by an accident. So, the fourth one, he is without fault or with no intention of causing. Ibig sabihin po, wala pong intention si offender na gawin yung accident na yun or mag-cause ng accident na yun. So next, take note, dapat present po lahat yung elements na yan kay accidental death para po ma-exempt sa criminal liability si offender. So next, we have the negligent death. So death due to reckless imprudence or negligence, lack of skill, or lack of foresight. Take note po sa negligence death, the revised penal code provide the felonies may be committed when the wrongful or act result from imprudence, negligence, lack of foresight, lack of skills. If death occurred due to recklessness of someone, he may be charged from homicide to reckless imprudence. So, paano po ba yan? Example po, sa car accident ulit. Alam na ni driver na bawal mag-overtake dun sa road na yon or dun sa lane na yon, still nag-overtake po siya. So, ang nangyari is nag-cause siya ng accident which is nagsanhi po ng mga injury or worse is na may patay pa or may fatal injury pa dun sa accident na yon. So, anong maaaring case po ni driver? Although na wala siyang intention na gawin yung accident na yon, so dahil alam naman niyang mali pero nag-overtake pa rin po siya, so it means liable po si offender sa kung may namatay, liable po siya sa homicide with reckless imprudence. So next we have the suicidal death. So suicide is the act of intentionally causing one's own life. And take note po sa ating law na yung suicide po is hindi natin siya pinafanish. So yung pinafanish lang po natin is yung assistance to the commissions of suicide lang po. So paano po ba yan? So yung law natin does not punish the persons committing a suicide. Dahil po yung society natin is they believe that they has always considered a persons who attempt to kill himself is an unfortunate being or a wretched persons or yung nakakaawa daw po. Yung persons na yun, so mas deserve po niya yung maawa po tayo kaysa sa bigyan po natin siya ng penalty. So, but a persons who give assistance to commissions of suicides is the one who is punishable. So, bakit po? Because the person who assists in committing a suicide has no right to destroy or assist in the destructions of the life of another. So, meron din po tayong provision under our revised penal code that giving assistance to suicide under Article 253 of the revised penal code is any person who shall assist another to commit suicide shall be suffer the penalty of prison mayor if such persons lend his assistance to another to extent of doing the killing himself, he shall suffer the penalty of the reclusion temporal. However, if the suicide is not consummated, so the penalty of arresto mayor in its medium and maximum period shall be enforced. So take notes po that assistance to suicides is iba po siya kay mercy killing or tinatawag natin na euthanasia. So euthanasia or mercy killing is the practice of painless putting to death of a person suffering from some incurable disease. So next we have the Suicidal death or parricide under Article 246 of the Revised Penal Code is any person who shall kill his father, her mother, child, whether legitimate or illegitimate, or any of his ascendants or descendants or his spouse shall be guilty of parricide. So, pag po pinatay mo si papa, mother, or child, or other, whether it is legitimate or illegitimate, or other ascendants or descendants, or his spouse, is yung kaso po natin sa kanya is parricide. So next, meron din po tayong infanticide death. So infanticide death or infanticidal death or infanticides under Article 255 of the Revised Penal Code, it is the killing of a child less than 3 days old. Remember, the child is less than 3 days old. Ito po yung tinatawag natin na infanticide. So, paano po pag yung pumatay is yung tatay niya or yung mother niya? So, consider pa rin po ba siya na infanticide or magpo-fall po siya kay parricide? So, take note po, if the offender is the father, mother, or legitimate or ascendants, so the crime is still infanticide po. Dahil infanticide po siya at hindi siya parricide. Dahil yung basis po ng crime natin is hindi po tayo nagbe-base sa relationship but we are based on the age of the child. Kaya magpo-fall pa rin po siya ng infanticide as long as it is less than 3 days old. So next we have the abortion and infanticide. So we have two. Yung pagkakaiba po ni abortion kay infanticide. The first one is the victim in abortion is still a fetus which is not yet valuable. Ibig sabihin, kay abortion, yung victim is fetus, nasa loob pa ng kanya, sa tiyan ng mother which is not viable. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa po kayang mabuhay or mag-defendant na mabuhay sa sarili niyang hininga si victim or si fetus. Pag sinabi naman po natin infanticide, ito po yung the victim is already viable or kaya na niyang huminga sa sarili niya. Which is, kaya nga, after birth na to after birth, which is 3 days old, less than 3 days old. So next, the fetus had a intrauterine life of less than 7 months and it was destroyed within 24 hours after its complete separations from the womb. It is still abortions. So, it is defined by Leonard D. Vuado and Notes and Cases on the Revised Penal Code in 2004. So next we have murder under Article 248 of our Revised Penal Code. So pag sinabi po natin murder is any persons not falling within the provisions of 246, yung parricide, shall kill another and shall be guilty of murder and shall be punished by a reclusion temporal in its maximum period to death if committed with any of the following or attendant circumstances. So dapat yung pagpatay kay persons is magpo-fall siya any of the following circumstances para ma-consider natin siya as a murder. As long as yung mga hindi siya nagpo-fall kay parricide, so pwede siya mag-fall kay murder or pwede siya mag-fall kay homicide. So ano ba yung mga circumstances para matawag natin yung isang pagpatay sa isang tao is murder siya. So meron tayong circumstances na pwede kung saan mag-fall siya under murder. The first one is with treachery, so taking advantage of superior strength with the aid of armed men or employing means to weaken the defense or of means or persons to ensure the afford impunity. So take note po, pag sinabi natin treachery, it is when the offender commit any crimes against persons employing means or method of form in a executions thereof, and tends directly or especially to ensure its executions without risk to himself arising from the defense with the offended party may be made under Article 14, paragraph 16 of the Revised Penal Code. So, paano po ba yan? Pag nagiging treachery po siya, pag si offender is hindi niya binigyan ng pagkakataon na makapagdepensa si victim. So, paano po yan? Example po, halimbawa si Mr. A is nagsa-CR siya. So si Mr. B is inabangan niya talaga or habang nagsi-CR si Mr. A is yung ginawa niya is bigla niyang tinulak yung pinto at sabay putok ng baril. So, on that instance, dahil nga nagpupupo or nagsi-CR si Mr. A is wala siyang paraan para makapaglaban or dahil nga sa gulat niya is hindi na niya ma-defense yung sarili niya dun sa crime na kinumit ni Mr. V. Or example pa, so si Mr. A is pinaakyat ni Mr. B. So after umakyat sa puno ni Mr. A is doon nag-start na pinagbabaril ni Mr. B, si Mr. A o kaya pinagpapana. So pwede nagpo-fall siya as treachery kasi hindi si Mr. Beast, di niya binigyan ng um, paraan o pagkakataon na makapagdepensa si Mr. A. Why? Kasi nga, dahil nga nakaakyat sa puno, it means yung dalawang kamay niya is nakahawak sa puno. So, hindi niya alam paano depensahin yung pagpapana or pagbaril kay Mr. A. So, yan. As long as yung ginawang paraan ni offender is walang chance na makapagdepensa si victim, yan po yung tinatawag natin na treachery. So, next we have the consideration of price, reward, or promise. It means pinatay mo yung sundalo dahil may price. Halimbawa, yung mga kill for rent natin, yan. Mag-fall sila under the murder. Or yung rewards, pinatay mo siya dahil alam mo after niya mamatay is ikaw na yung susunod dun sa posisyon na yon, which is may reward ka makukuha. Yan. Nagpo-fall din po siya sa circumstances ng murder. Next, by means of inundations, fire, poisons, explosion, shipwreck, stranding of a vessel, derailment or assault of a streetcar or locomotive, fall of an airship, by means of motor, vehicle, over the use of the another means involving great waste of ruin. So it means yung paraan na ginamit mo is magkakause siya ng great waste or ruin, is magpo-fall po siya sa circumstances ni murder. Halimbawa, si A, para mapatay mo, si A is yung ginawa mo is, para makasigurado na mapatay si A is yung ginawa mo is sinunog mo yung buong bahay niya. So, yung paraan na yon is magpo-fall po siya dito sa circumstances na to. Next, we have the on occasions of any calamities enumerated in the preceding paragraphs, such as po yung earthquake, eruptions of volcano, destructive cyclone, epidemic, or any other public calamity. Ibig sabihin po, yung crime na ginawa mo is during these calamities, which is vulnerable yung taong yun, which means nag-commit ka pa rin ng crimes or pinatay mo pa rin siya, dito siya magpo-fall under dito sa circumstances na yan, as long as it is during earthquake, eruption of volcanoes, epidemic, or even dito ngayon sa atin, pandemic. Pwede siyang mag-fall ng murder. Next, we have the evident premeditations. Pag sinabi natin evident premeditation, it means may time ka pa para planuhin yung pagpatay sa kanya. Kaya evident premeditations, pinlano mo na patayin siya. Ibig may plano pa. Halimbawa, may kagalit ka is yung call center. Dahil nga nakagalitan mo siya, ginawa mo is yung tinignan mo or pinlano mo kung anong oras siya umuwi, kung mga anong oras siya umuwi, anong oras siya pumapasok. So, kung alam mo na 11:30 is nandun na siya dun sa kanto nila at alam mo walang sasakyan dun, once na ginawa mo yun or yung plano mo or may plano yung pagpatay sa kanya, dito siya pumapasok as evident premeditations. So next we have with cruelty or by deliberate, inhumanly augmenting the suffering of the victims or the outraging or scooping of his person or corpse. Ibig sabihin po, may cruelty yung actions or yung method na pagpatay mo. Halimbawa, alam mong patay na siya. So, anong ginawa mo pa? Pinugutan mo pa siya ng ulo or para makonceal yung body. Is yung ginawa mo is kinapchap mo siya at sinako. Which is, yan yung tinatawag natin na cruelty. Or pwede naman yung inhumane augmenting or yung scooping, ito yung pinatay mo na siya, ang ginawa mo is minura-mura mo pa siya, dinuraan mo pa siya, and worse, inihiyan mo pa siya, which is pwedeng mag-cause ng mental degradations po dun sa part po ni victim. So, meron po tayong example po ng ating cruelty or yung scooping natin. So, the first one is Dismembering of the corpse by cutting of the head, yun po, yung pagtagal sa ulo ng isang biktima, or ito urinating on it, yun yung paghihi dun sa corpse, or putting it on sack, yun, or palagay sa sako and throwing the sack in a garbage pit, isa din po yan. And next is stripping it of the clothes, yun. Yan po yung mga pasok natin sa under the cruelty. Kaya po pinagbabawal din po kasi ito kasi scooping or outraging includes doing any act upon the corpse which added to the mental suffering or humiliations of the ear of the victims of which offends the public. So next we have the homicide death. So pag sinabi naman po natin homicide death, ito po yung under Article 249 of the Revised Penal Code is any person who not falling within the provisions of 246 or yung fireside and shall kill another without the attendance of any circumstances enumerated in provisions of Article 248 or yung murder natin, or the Revised Penal Code shall be deemed guilty of the homicide and punishable by reclusion temporal. Pag po yung pagpatay sa isang person is hindi po siya nagpo-fall under the provision po ni 246 or yung suicidal death natin, at hindi rin po siya nagpo-fall dun sa mga circumstances po ni murder under the Article 248 is dito po siya magpo-fall kay homicidal death. So, elements po ni homicidal death, dapat po yung person was killed, so namatay. So, the cause of killed him is without any the justifying circumstances, and there is the intentions of the part of the offender to kill the victim, and such presumptions can be inferred from the death of the victim, and that the killing does not fall under the definitions of the crime of murder, parricide, and also the infanticide. So, meron din po tayong death under special circumstances. So, the first one is the death caused in a tumultuous affray. It is under Article 251 of the Revised Penal Code, when while several persons not composing group organized for the common purpose of assaulting or tracking each other reciprocally, quarrel and assault each other in a confused and tumultuous manner, and in the cause of affray someone is killed, and it cannot be ascertained who actually killed the deceased, but the persons or the persons who inflict a serious physical injury can be identified. Such persons or persons shall be punished by prison major. And if it cannot be determined who inflict the serious injuries on the deceased, the penalty of prison correctional in its medium and maximum period shall be imposed upon those who shall have used the violence upon the persons of the victim. Pag sinabi po nating tumultuous affray, ito po yung riot na kung saan matatawag natin siyang death under the special circumstances pag meron po yung mga sumusunod na elements nito. The first one is yung tumultuous affray is exists at least 4 persons take part of it. Ibig sabihin, matatawag natin siyang tumultuous affray or riot pag may involved po na 4 persons. Dapat 4 persons po yung pinaka-minimum niya. So the second one is when there are 2 identified groups of men who assaulted each other, so there is no tumultuous affray. Ibig sabihin po, dapat yung dalawang grupo nyon or yung mga taong involved doon is hindi sila organized group. And the third one is the person is liable po sa death by cause of tumultuous affray if the persons who inflicted serious physical injuries, kung sino po yung nag-inflict ng serious injuries, siya po yung liable for the death of someone, as long as ma-identified kung sino po siya. So, if hindi naman po, if it is not known who inflicted the serious physical injuries on the dead, all persons who use violence upon the persons of the victim sila po ay liable lahat as a frictions correctional in a medium and maximum period. Pag hindi po ma-identify kung sino po yung nag-cause ng pagkamatay ng taong nandun sa riot na yun or isa dun sa nakiriot na yun, is maaari pong lahat ng tao na nag-cause ng physical or use violence dun sa taong yun is sila po lahat ay makakasuhan ng prison correctional in a medium and maximum periods. Next, we have the death or physical injuries inflicted under exceptional circumstances under Article 247 of the Revised Penal Code. So ito naman is any legally married person who, having surprised his spouse in the act of committing sexual intercourse with another person, and shall kill any of them or both of them in the act or immediate thereafter, and shall inflict upon them any serious physical injury, shall suffer the penalty of destierro. And this rule shall be applicable the same circumstances to parent with respect to their daughters under 18 years of age and their seducer while the daughter are living with their parents. So take note po dito sa special circumstances natin na once po si spouse is, ibig sabihin po, si offender dito is yung spouse or yung wife, maybe wife or si husband. Na may fall po siya under exceptional circumstances. Basta take note po, yung susunod is nandun siya. The first one is yung spouse must be legally married. Dapat po, legal married po yung dalawa. If not naman po, yung situation is pwede lang po siya mag-fall under mitigating circumstances of fashions or of obfuscations. Next, we have, in the second paragraph naman po, it's necessary that the daughter is legitimate. It means po say applicable din po siya dun sa daughter. It means as long as yung daughter is below 18, is kasama din po siya dito sa special circumstances natin ito. And next, we have the article applies only when the daughter is single. Dapat single si daughter. And whether it is legitimate or illegitimate. So, 4 is, nandun po yung word na surprise. It means po, it is sudden or unexpectedly. So, hindi inaasaan ni offender na masasaksiyan niya yung ganong situations. Number 5, Article 247, it is applicable when the cause did not see is spouse in a act of sexual intercourse with another person. However, if it is enough that the circumstances reasonable to show that the carnal act is being committed or has been committed. So, pag under po kay Republic Act 247, ito nga yung when si wife is nakita niya or nahuli niya si husband na merong ka-intercourse na iba, which is sa sobrang galit niya or pagka-surprise niya is napatay niya si girl or yung kabet, or worse is pati si husband, is pwede siya maging exceptional circumstances. But halimbawa naman po, pag po si wife is na hindi niya actual na nakita na nag-intercourse yung kabet at si husband, is nakita lang niya na yung nasaksihan lang niya is parang nagsusuot na ng damit yung dalawa, is pasok pa rin po siya dito sa circumstances na to kasi may knowledge ka na. Bakit, diba? Bakit walang damit yung dalawa o nagsusuot sila ng damit at doon sa isang kwarto lang. So, it means yung presumption is nandun na. So, yung carnal knowledge carnal act is nandun na or being committed na. Next, we have the sexual intercourse does not include preparatory acts. It means di naman kailangan na actual na masaksiyan mo sila na nag-sexual intercourse. So next, we have the immediate thereafter, means that the discovery, escape, pursuit, or the killing must all forms part of the continuous act. Ibig sabihin po, yung pagpatay dapat po ni wife kay husband or dun sa kabit niya is after niya masaksihan dahil nga sa bukso ng galit or parang dumilim yung kanyang paningis, napatay niya. Dapat ganon. If may time intervals tayo or may after ng 5 hours or 4 hours, doon pa lang nakaisip si wife is hindi na siya pasok under these circumstances. So the eighth one, the number 8 is the killing must be direct by product of the range of the accused. Yun yan. Dapat nagpo-fall siya dun sa kanyang nasaksihan. And in the case, the accused is the husband, he should not have the promoted or facilitated the prostitution of his wife or the daughter, or the accused spouse had not consented to the infidelity of others. Ibig sabihin, wala pong consent galing dun po kay wife na gawin yung act na yun. So next, if death or serious physical injuries resulted, the accused will be imposed of the penalty discharge, which is intended more protections for protect him from the retaliations or of relatives of the victims than a punishment. Ibig sabihin po, once na nakomit ito ni husband or wife, dahil nga nasaksihan niyo yung sexual intercourse o yung pangangaliwa ng kanilang asawa, is pwede siyang makasuhan as dischero. Yung kasong bibigay lang sa kanya is dischero, which is si dischero is kino-consider natin siya na protection instead na penalty. Dahil po si dischero is parang protection siya kay offender pa in case na mag-retaliate yung mga relatives ng kanyang wife or nung victim or yung victim. So si dischero din po, ito yung kung saan yung apart or within po sa 25 kilometers of the residence of the accused is hindi po siya pwedeng pumasok. Ibig po si offender, yung tirahan niya, yan. Then within the radius of 25 kilometer is hindi po pwedeng pumunta doon si offender, which is pwede po siyang kasing mag-cause ng panganib in her own or his own life dahil nga pwede maghiganti yung mga kamag-anak ng victim sa kanya. So, yung discharge po, meron din siyang specified length of time na sinusunod. So, next we have if what were inflicted were less serious or slight physical injuries, there is no criminal liability, meaning he or she will not suffer from the penalty of discharge. Pag naman po inflicted, yung injury na na-inflict lang po niya is less serious or slight physical injury, is wala pong criminal liability si offender. And kahit po penalty of discharge is hindi rin po siya makakasuhan. More on compromising lang po. Compromise sa both part po ng dalawa. Next, we have the special death. So, special death, we have the judicial death. So, the modern method in the executions of the death sentence have abandoned inhumane, cruel, and barbarous means. Execution by garroting, decapitations by means of the guillotine, and by drowning, which were common during the medieval days, are no longer practiced. And the statutes of all countries state that legal procedure for the executions of death penalties. And the constitutions, like that of the Philippines, imposes certain limitations to the lawmaking body as to method to be established. So example po or methods po ng ating mga judicial death is meron po tayong death by electrocutions. So, ano ba yung death by electrocutions? Po, ito yung persons is made to sit on a chair with the electrical conducting material with a strap of electrodes on both wrists and ankle and head, and alternating current voltage of more than 1,500 volts is put on until the conflict dies. So, sa ating bansa naman po, yung electric chair po natin is pinalitan po siya ng lethal injections. So, wala tayong electrical chair. Meron tayo pero binago siya, ginawa natin siyang lethal injections, but na-abolish din po ito when yung death penalty is in-abolish siya. So, yung first na na-execute po sa ating lethal injection ay si Leo Echegaray during 1999 for the case of raping his own daughter. So next, we have the death by hanging naman po. The convict is made to stand in an elevated collapsible platform with a black hood on the head and a noose made of rope around the neck, and the other hand of which is fixed in the elevated structure above the head. Without the knowledge of the convict, the platform suddenly collapsed, which caused the sudden suspensions of the body and tightening of the noose around the neck, and death may be due of asphyxia or injury of the cervical portions of the spinal cord. So next, we have the death by musketry. Kasi natin pong death by musketry, ito po yung tinatawag natin firing squad. So in the past, sometimes it is also called by fusilating, which is a method of capital punishment particularly common po sa mga military and in times of war. Execution by shooting is a fair old practice, and some reasons for its use are the firearms are usually readily available, and gunshot to a vital organ such as the brain or heart most often will kill relatively quickly. So next we have the death by gas chamber. So the convict is enclosed in a compartment and an obnoxious or asphyxiating gas is introduced. So the most common gas na ginagamit po is yung carbon monoxide. So the convict will not be removed from from that gas chamber unless he is pronounced dead by the penitentiary physicians. So take note po that the above mentions of judicial death is no longer applicable sa ating bansa since the impositions of death penalty was already abolished by our Republic Act number 9346. So lahat po niyan is hindi na applicable. To start po na inabolish din po yung death penalty noong inabolish po yung death penalty under the Republic Act 9346. So next we have, aside from judicial death, meron din po tayong tinatawag na euthanasia. Yan. Si euthanasia or tinatawag din natin na mercy killing. It is the deliberately and painless accelerations of a death of a person usually suffering from incurable or distressing disease. Ibig sabihin po ng euthanasia, upang mapabilis po yung pagkamatay ng isang tao is ito po yung tinatawag na natin na mercy killing para hindi na po mag-suffer lalo si patients. Or with consent po mismo ni patients is nakikiusap siya sa kay doctor na yan, napatayin na lang siya para hindi na siya mag-suffer more on the pain ng disease na kanyang nararanasan or dun sa sakit na kanyang nararamdaman. Okay? We have the types of euthanasia. We have the active euthanasia. So intentional or deliberate applications of the means to shorten the life of a person that may be done with or without the consent or knowledge of the persons. Active euthanasia is on demand in the putting to death of a person in compliance with wishes of the persons or the persons to shorten his suffering. Pag sinabi po natin na active euthanasia, ito po yung accelerations or upon the request or upon the consent of a persons, or kung hindi man po yung patients is maaaring yung kamag-anak po ni patients is makikiusap po sila na i-accelerate na po yung death ng pasyente. So, by what? By introducing po ng mga introducing po ng mga chemicals or ng drugs para mapabilis po yung pagkamatay po ni patients. Then we have the passive euthanasia naman po, there is an absence of applications of the means to accelerate death, but the natural course of disease is allowed to have its way to extinguish the life of persons. Consequently, the concept of the orthothanasia and dysthanasia was adopted. Pag sinabi po natin na facet euthanasia, ito po yung parang si patient is inayaan lang niya na um, without acceleration of the cause of his death, is inayaan lang niya na mamatay siya. Then, meron po tayong dalawang klase po ng facet euthanasia. The first one is the orthothanasia, when the unincurably ill person is allowed to die a natural death without the applications of any operations or treatment procedure. Pag sinabi po natin na orthothanasia, ito po yung klase ng pagkamatay ni patient which is hindi niya pinabilis yung kanyang pagkamatay, but hinayaan na lang niyang mamatay siya by a natural or original cause ng kanyang pagkamatay is yung kanyang disease. So, parang walang treatment or walang operations na ginawa sa kanya, kundi hinayaan lang niyang mamatay siya naturally on the cause of his disease. Next, we have the dysthanasia naman, when there is an attempt to extend the lifespan of a person by the use of extraordinary treatment without which the patients would have died earlier. Ito naman, dysthanasia naman po, ito si patients naman is para ma-prolong or ma-extend yung lifespan niya is nag-undergo siya ng mga extraordinary treatment or operation, but yung result naman po is may nagka-complication, which is yun din po yung cause ng kanyang mabilisan or early cause of death niya. Next, we have what is type of death from starvation. So, pag kasi po tinawag natin ng starvation, it is the deprivations of regular and constant supply of foods and water. Meron po tayong dalawang types. We have the acute starvations and the chronic starvations. Pag sinabi po natin acute starvation, it's happened when the necessary food has been suddenly and completely withheld for persons. Ibig sabihin po, yung acute starvation, it is a severe deficiency in caloric energy taken or below the level needed to maintain a organism to life, or ito po yung talagang ginutom mo yung isang tao totally na hindi mo na siya binigyan ng foods hanggang sa magkaroon ng below level na needed para ma-maintain yung organism para mabuhay, or yung mga chronic energy na i-intake is totally diniprive mo sa kanya. At which is yung deprivation na yun is nag-cause siya ng permanent organ damage, which is yun yung cause ng kanyang pagkamatay. Yun yung tinatawag natin na acute starvations. Totally na diniprive mo sa kanya yung mga necessary foods na kailangan niya. Then we have yun yung tinatawag na acute starvations. Then next, we have the chronic starvation naman. Ito yung happens when there is a gradual or a deficient supply of foods. Ito naman po yung unti-unti mo siyang ginugutom or unti-unti mong binabawasan yung mga sufficient foods na kailangan niya. Which is yung katawan natin is nangangailangan ng compound, meron tayong tinatawag na compounds of life like yung carbohydrates, lipids or fats, proteins, and nucleic acid. So yan, pag yan, unti-unti mo tinanggal sa kanya, which is magkukos din ng pagkamatay sa kanya, yun yung tinatawag, or pagkagutom sa kanya, kung unti-unti mo siyang ginugutom or binabawasan yung supply ng pagkain which is necessary para dun sa kanyang health, yun yung tinatawag natin na chronic starvations. And I think dito na po natin i-end yung ating discussions. So thank you for your listening, and watch out for our another discussions, the last discussions of our topic in CDI2. So thank you and God bless.